I get a lot of people asking for tips on how to draw. Stuff like, how do you draw hands? How do you draw backgrounds? Like I know how to answer that. And how do you draw women? Just to name a few examples. So today I'm going to answer some questions and give some art tips, starting with the easiest one to go over, and ending with one that will help even advanced artists. That all said, let's get started. First up, we have a question from Lucy, who asks, do you have any tips for hatching or cross-hatching? Good question and an easy one to go over, because all you really need to do is learn how to draw a bunch of lines. Hatching and cross-hatching are shading techniques that are used to imply form or create a gradient of values from light to dark. These effects are achieved by drawing sets of closely spaced parallel lines in the case of hatching, or closely spaced intersecting lines in the case of cross-hatching. The main advice I'll be giving here will be in regard to hatching specifically, and you'll see why. There are two different ways that you can use hatching. The first method has you draw your hatch marks parallel to or in the direction of your light source. This gives an emphasis on the shape of the object, implying its form. The second method has you draw your hatch marks at an angle to the light source, usually parallel to or approximately parallel to the edge of where the shadow starts. Cross-hatching is really just mixing the two forms of hatching to create a gradient of values on the subject you've drawn and help inform its shape at the same time. You can use one technique or both in the same drawing, and it's really more just a stylistic choice when you choose to do so. There are other situations you can use cross-hatching and hatching in a composition, but these are your basics. Next tip. How do you break down poses into simple shapes? Asked by, another good question, but before I answer, if you found this video helpful so far, give it a like, and if you have any questions for me, leave a comment, or join my Discord server. The link is in the description. So the human body can be broken up into a few basic shapes. I start with an Among Us, a pair of underwear, and then add spheres, cylinders, and ellipsoids. Mostly, joints are represented by spheres, with the parts where bones run through being cylinders, and attached to those cylinders are ellipsoids that represent the muscles that bend and bunch up as the character moves around. Even then, the cylinder-ellipsoid combo part is often simplified further, which makes deconstruction of poses even easier. Once you have this information, you can start to picture where these pieces go. Like I said, I start with the Among Us for the upper torso and the underwear shape for the pelvis. These act as anchors for the limbs and immediately inform you of the perspective of the pose that you're drawing. From there, I draw spheres for the shoulders, elbows, and knees, cylinders for the upper arms, forearms, thighs, and so on and so forth, until I end up with a figure that looks like a mannequin, now positioned in the pose I desire, and ready for me to add whatever details I want to it. Now, to get better at this skill and for it to become intuitive, you really just need to practice. Before we get to the tips that could help even advanced artists, I want to let you know that everything I'm talking about in this video will be available as a document on my Patreon. That's just one of the benefits of being a patron though. You also get access to early and extra videos, exclusive art, and even free commissions like this at certain tiers. Now this last question comes from Lily and is an especially difficult one to answer. How do you figure out your art style? This one's tough for a lot of people. Even artists who have drawn professionally for years look at their art and think, how do I differentiate my art from the art of others? I do have some tips for this, but unfortunately the biggest one is to draw a lot. I know that may be disappointing to hear, but maybe this next tip will help you draw more thoughtfully. You see, your art style is ultimately going to be determined by two things: the things you like to draw and the things that you know how to draw. For example, I love the painterly style and the detail in the works of Alex Ross, but I've painted maybe 4 times in my life. I can draw similar to Akutami Gege, but I prefer to include details in my art that Gege generally doesn't. Now, how do these examples affect my style? Well, I pick and choose aspects from both artists and apply them to what I make. In this case, the more realistic features of Alex Ross that I like, and the relatively simple line art of Gege that I'm able to consistently execute. As you consume media, you'll figure out what you like and dislike in the art you see. Through practice, you'll learn what you can execute and pick up new skills when you need to. Eventually, you'll have a retinue of things you enjoy adding to your art that you're also consistently able to implement. The culmination of these consistent artistic decisions are what determine your style. And you may be doing things that are already shaping your style without realizing it. Maybe you like drawing your characters with big, shiny eyes. Maybe you like crosshatching everything you draw. Maybe you prefer to paint than draw at all. These are all examples of choices that affect your style, and maybe now that you know that, you'll be more aware of the decisions you make when you make them, and how those decisions are affecting your artwork. If you're still here, thanks for watching to the end, and a special thanks to my patrons for supporting the channel. I make nothing from making content on YouTube, so the extra support you give me keeps the channel going. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video. Till then, stay creative. So says Doom.